Yeah, here, let me push the record. Here we are. Okay, are we good?
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وأرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه وادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. آمين يا رب العالمين. So welcome everybody to our lecture series, Maximizing Your Du'as. Maximizing Your Du'as. And I've been told that this is being recorded and it's live on all the social media platforms, inshallah. So for those who want to join, inshallah, or you know that want to join, they can watch it on the YouTube channel and on the Facebook account. So let's start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we're here to talk about, inshallah, in the next 3 weeks, I think we have 1 week off in the middle, about dua. And I want to start with a personal story. My first, or the first experience I can remember with dua is when I was in junior high. Probably when I was like, I don't know, 12 or something like that. And at that time, my parents had split up. My parents had divorced. And for those of you who experienced it, you know how difficult it is, especially for like teenagers. It's difficult for teenagers. Inshallah, nobody has to experience that. But it's part of life. And it was difficult for us. We had to go to different houses, live 1 week here, 1 week there. So it's a difficult experience. And so as a young person, and it seemed like they were never going to go back. I remember my mom said, this is not impossible. And then we had to go to this really bad neighborhood. And I remember, subhanAllah, and at that time, for many young people, it's a time where you're trying to discover yourself, your deen, your identity. And I remember I had some, I wouldn't say doubts about my religion, but I had questions. So I remember making this dua. I said, oh Allah, if you really exist, then make my parents come back together. If you really exist, make my parents come back together. And I'm not exaggerating, it seemed like impossible for my parents, because both sides, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells in the Quran that if both of them want to reconcile, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them tawfiq, right? But it looked like none of them wanted to make it work. But subhanAllah, I kept making this dua, and within a couple of weeks, they started talking with the imam, and then eventually they got back together, subhanAllah. That was my first experience of seeing the power of dua. And for those of you who may have experienced that in your life before, it's an amazing feeling. Especially those du'as that you don't have any control over. There's some things where Allah gives you the asbab. It gives you some of the, I guess, you have some input into it. But there's some du'as that you have absolutely no control. And that was one of them, subhanAllah. When dua really started becoming part of my life is when I started taking this course with Sheikh Hamza Ayedi, may Allah have mercy on him, which is called Visionaire. And just out of curiosity, anybody here has taken that course before? Anybody here? Nobody? Okay. Okay, awesome. So have anybody heard of Sheikh Hamza Ayedi? Nobody heard of Sheikh Hamza Ayedi? Very interesting. Okay. So Sheikh Hamza Ayedi, may Allah have mercy on him, he actually passed away very recently. SubhanAllah, he was actually one of, I would say, my biggest role model as I was growing up. Sheikh Hamza Ayedi is the founder of Al-Maghrib. Or he was the founder of Al-Maghrib Institute. You must have heard of Al-Maghrib. Hopefully I guess I'm not. Anybody heard of Al-Maghrib Institute? Yeah? Okay. So Sheikh Hamza Ayedi, he founded Al-Maghrib Institute. And he founded also another company called Discover You. And one of the courses he did is a course called Visionaire. And what it was is basically, and SubhanAllah, it was so successful, I think he did it like 15 times. And I think I did it with him probably 3 times or 4 times online, and once he actually came to here, Banff, Alberta, and a group of us actually went there, and we had a retreat there. And so it's basically a course. It's not about teaching you about dua, but basically how to understand the power of dua and how to actually craft your own du'as. Because sometimes I think for most of us, when we talk about dua, we think of like just saying something that's in our mind or in our heart and just making dua, which is fine. That's you can do that. But what about some more work into dua? Some planning, some writing them down, using the right names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, picking the right times to make dua, right? So all those things, if you put them together, you have a really great experience. So inshallah, in the next 3 days, 3 weeks, I think we have 1 week in the middle that's off. This is what we're going to cover today. Inshallah, we want to go just intro to dua. Not too much detail about dua, but just dua, what it means for us Muslims. And then week 2, inshallah, what we want to do is I'd like to so we benefit from this. Together we can actually maybe craft some du'as. So inshallah, make sure you have pencil and paper next week as well, inshallah. Together we can everybody has their own list, inshallah. And then week 3, some of the du'a habits and how to maximize your du'a. And so inshallah, the goal by the end of these 3 sessions is that you come out with a list of du'as, inshallah. Not a list of 20, maybe a list of 5 to 10 max of things that you really think will change your life, that you really would like to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. Like, let's begin. So my goal inshallah to finish just before 7 and then have some questions and answers inshallah, and then we'll stop there. Like, so inshallah today what we want to cover is what is dua. Dua is that change the world. Dua and success. Right? And then when we talk about, your life, is your life stagnant? You feel like you're not moving ahead? Okay, maybe dua has something to do with that. Why make dua? Right? Some people just don't bother. Even though it's the weapon of the believer, right? It's a weak hadith, but it really is the weapon of the believer. And number 6, the most important key is knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll talk about that bi'idhnillah. Like, and if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just write it down, unless it's directly related or something you don't understand, then I can answer inshallah on the spot. Like, Jameel. So what is dua? So if I was to ask you guys, what is dua? What comes to your mind? What comes to your mind when I say, what is dua? What's dua? I'm asking you guys, it's your turn. So I can, Naam?
The prayer.
Okay, so dua is prayer, right? And prayer is salah. And so linguistically, salah also means prayer, right? Linguistically, salah actually means prayer, like calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we say dua in English, we would say prayer, right? In English, we would say prayer. Okay, tayyib. What else? The prayer of asking for something, not the prayer of the actual technical prayer. Now, what else? What comes to your mind? Dua. Supplication. Okay, just give me synonyms now. But what comes like in terms of what it means to you as a believer? What is it? What is dua to you? Different kinds of dua. Is there a dua that you always say, or a dua that?
Request from Allah.
Yeah. So it's basically you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something, right? That's what dua is. Like, so and Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says in an authentic narration. He says, "Ad-du'a huwa al-ibad." It's a very powerful statement by the Prophet ﷺ. He said, the dua, supplication, is worship. Right? طبعا al-ibadah is worship. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to worship Him. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the first command in the Quran is, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ اُعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمْ. O mankind, worship your Lord. Okay? الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. So that's the first command. So al-ibadah, really, that's why we were created, to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But here, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is saying, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. This one? He's saying, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Right? It's off. Did I turn it on?
Turn it off.
I meant to click it when I was putting it on. So he said, ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. So that's really amazing. I don't know, for me it's amazing because now he's saying that all this whole thing of worship, okay, a dua is that. Why do you think he's saying that? Why do you think he's saying that? What's the relation between dua and ibadah? Yeah, go ahead.
When you make dua, it's a sign that you have faith in God.
Good? So when you make dua, it's a sign that you have faith in God. Otherwise, you wouldn't be calling Him, right? Or you believe in Him. Type. So, but what's the relation now?
Also, it could be you're sure that thing that you're praying Allah for, like you're making dua for something that seemed impossible, but you have that faith Allah is able to make it possible.
Okay, so when we say ibadah, what do you mean by ibadah? This will make sense. طبعا, dua is a type of what? It's a type of ibadah. It's actually one of the greatest types of ibadah. Okay? But when we say ibadah, what's ibadah? It's to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? It's to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what could be greater than you, right, putting, because someone who worships is a slave, so we are abd, right? And what could be greater than you asking your master? Which is exactly what dua is, right? And the first thing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran, when you open the Quran and we open Al-Fatiha, He teaches us to what? To make dua. So really, technically, half of Al-Fatiha is dua. Yeah? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. So really half of the surah that we read 17 times a day, at least, is all dua. It's interesting in Surah Ghafir, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمُ ادْعُونِي, and your Lord, okay, has commanded you to call upon Him. وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ, I will answer you. So that's a guarantee from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're going to mention that ayah later. But then He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي, indeed those who are too arrogant to worship me. Okay? So some of the ulama said, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's talking about dua, and then He called it ibadah. So technically it was supposed to be إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ دُعَائِي, okay, upon my supplication. So then here He interchanged it to show that if you don't have dua, you don't have ibadah. Some of the ulama said, if you don't have dua, you don't have ibadah. Because if you're not going to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you don't really depend on Him. You don't really expect anything from Him. Because the definition of us as a abd means that we are in need of Allah. And Allah is not in need of us. And so if you are in need of Allah, then you should show that need. And you should express that need. Right? Because you are in need. But if you don't express it, that need, it shows arrogance. It shows arrogance. So someone says, oh, I don't want to ask Allah. Well, okay, then what? You can take care of yourself, and you can feed yourself. You can guarantee your oxygen, your food, your risk. No, you can't, right? And so a sign of iman, like what the sister said, is that you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the greatest connection right there. And look at this ayah at the end of Surah Al-Furqan. He says, قُلْ مَا يَعْبَأُ بِكُمْ رَبِّي لَوْلَا دُعَاؤُكُمْ فَقَدْ كَذَّبْتُمْ فَسَوْفَ يَكُونُ لِزَامًا. Say, O Prophet, to them, okay, you would not really matter to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala لَوْلَا دُعَاؤُكُمْ. Here the translator, Dr. Mustafa, he translated it as faith, but in other translations, and here in Arabic, it says لَوْلَا دُعَاؤُكُمْ لَوْلَا دُعَاءُكُمْ. يعني, had it not been for your dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not really be bothered with you. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves when a person calls upon Him. It's the exact opposite of the son of Adam. And this is an interesting relationship. The son of Adam, yeah, all of you here, if a sister kept calling you for something, you would get bothered. You'd be like, khalas, block her. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves it, is the opposite, direct opposite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves it when you call upon Him. And Allah doesn't like it, He hates it when an abd doesn't ask Him. And sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put you in a difficult situation so you can go ask. SubhanAllah. That's how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the person to ask Him. Fine. We have this narration, right, about tying your camel. A man came to the Prophet ﷺ, and طبعا he has his camel, right? I mean, you can compare it to a car. Okay, someone comes with his car, and he parks it, and he says, should I lock it, or should I just have tawakkul on Allah? Should I depend on Allah? Yeah. So a man came with his camel. طبعا if you don't tie your camel, he's gonna run off. Okay. So he said, O Prophet of Allah, should I tie it? Okay. I'll put the hadith so you can see it. He says, عقلها وأتوكل أو أطلقها وأتوكل. Should I tie it and have tawakkul, and put trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or should I just leave it and have tawakkul? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, عقلها وتوكل. Right? Tie it and rely upon Allah. Right? You can get a lot of benefits from this hadith, but a lot of people they they get bogged down with a lot of time. Okay, what do I mean by that? And so they'll do everything they can. They'll put their alarm, they'll work hard, they'll put in extra hours to achieve their goal, right? But they forget the whole part about tawakkul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thinking that they have full control. When in reality we don't have full control. Right? In most of our matters, we don't really have full control. Sah, we put the effort, right? But we don't have full control. So our responsibility is to do the work, right? Get up, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then have tawakkul, right? And it's not enough for someone to just make dua. You have to have tawakkul. And tawakkul has a lot of meanings. Tawakkul has the meaning of expecting good of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The meaning of, I've done my job, and the rest is upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And trusting Him. Trusting Him meaning, what do you mean trust someone? Meaning whatever He chooses for you, you're okay with it. That's what it means to trust. Because is it always going to happen the way you ask for it? It's not. And we know from experience, right? Because Allahu ya'lam wa antum la ta'lam. Allah knows, but we don't know. We don't know the future. We don't know what's best for us. You think you know what's best for you, but we don't. تمام فأعقلها وتوكل على الله. Right? A lot of people, they do all this things that they have control over, but they forget the biggest part, which is التوكل على الله. طيب. There's a beautiful line by they say it's from Ali radiallahu anhu. He says إذا لم يكن عون من الله للفتى فأول ما يجني عليه اجتهاده. It's a very nice line. It says if the young boy has no help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the first reason for his failure is his hard work. Right? We say, work hard, you'll be successful. But here, the poet is saying, or Ali radiallahu anhu is saying, that if you don't have Allah on your side, then you can work hard all day. You can put all the effort. If Allah doesn't want it to happen, it's not going to happen. Right? Then he's saying the first reason, out of exaggeration, first reason for his failure will be his ijtihad, his hard work. طيب. Jameel. Du'as that changed the world. So subhanAllah, if you open the Quran, that's something interesting you'll notice. When you look at the stories of the prophets, what do they all have in common? It's all du'as. The climax of the story is a dua. Right? Allah tells the story of Nuh, and then it just reached the time where he called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to just let everybody drown. Right? To punish everybody. Salih, Lut alayhi salam. Right? They come to him and they want to attack him, and they want to take his the guests. They want to attack the guests, the angels that came to him, and then he makes dua. Right? All of the stories of the prophets, Musa alayhi salam, dua. Right? All of them, you see that the main thing is dua, which shows you that these prophets are coming to teach about ibadah and tawheed, right? And the main common theme is what? One of the main common themes is dua. And we have, subhanAllah, some du'as that if you think about them, they change the world, right? What are some of the du'as that you can think of from the prophets that absolutely change the world? If they didn't happen, the world would be a different place. Think of some of them. From the Adam all the way to Nabi Muhammad. Think of some of the du'as. Can you think of one?
Dua Sayyidina Ibrahim.
Naam, dua Sayyidina Ibrahim, that's one of the most. What was his dua? Okay, so we made dua for this balad, okay, for Mecca, and what else? Okay, so let's go through some of them. The first one, Adam alayhi salam, what was his dua? Him and his wife, they committed the sin, right? What did they say? رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا وَإِن لَمْ تَغْفِرْ لَنَا وَتَرْحَمْنَا. طبعا Adam alayhi salam, he could have been like Iblis. Iblis, when he had the chance to make tawbah, did he make tawbah? He didn't make tawbah, subhanAllah. Right? Adam alayhi salam, he made tawbah. Right? He made tawbah, and this became something that it's part of the son of Adam. Iblis, what dua did he make? He also made dua. What dua did he make? That really changed the world if you think about it. Yeah. He says, oh Allah, give me respite, give me time, give me life until the day of judgment. Yeah, imagine he just died, khalas, there will be no shaitan, right? And Allah accepted his dua. And just a side note here, this one, and think about this. Sometimes people say, I'm too sinful to make dua. Like this is a common excuse for some people. You make dua for me, right? But are you worse than Iblis? Yani Iblis made dua after sinning, and Allah gave answered his dua. Yani if you're worse than Iblis, then okay. But nobody here is worse than Iblis. Yeah, I hope so, right? So this is another lesson we learn from that. Ibrahim alayhi salam made some amazing dua, right? And one of the common themes of the prophets is to make dua for their children, right? Or their progeny, right? Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't just make dua for his children, he made dua for the children of the children of the children. Yani all everybody after that. Yeah? For the dhurriyyah of that mechanic. And also Ibrahim alayhi salam made dua for what? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is the answer of Ibrahim's dua. وَبَعَثْ فِيهِمْ رَسُولًا مِنْ أَنفُسِهِمْ يَتْلُو عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتٍ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made dua that Allah will send a prophet from amongst them, the Arabs. Okay? And the answer of the dua was, and Nabi sallallahu told us that this was, I'm the answer of Ibrahim alayhi salam. I'm the answer of Ibrahim alayhi salam. What are some other du'as that we can think of? Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam, his story is like there's so many moments, right? The destruction of Fir'aun was actually a dua from Musa. Okay? He says, رَبَّنَا أَطْمِسْ عَلَىٰ أَمْوَالِهِمْ وَاشْتُدْ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ. And then Allah says, قَالَ قَدْ أُجِيبَتْ دَعْوَتُكُمَا. In Surah Yunus. Your dua has been answered. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Yunus that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused the sea to split and to drown Fir'aun. Right? The wife of Imran. Think of that dua. Right? Who's the wife of Imran? Imran of Imran? She's the mother of who? Maryam. What was her dua? She wanted, what did she want? She wanted an offspring, right? Remember the theme of offspring? She wanted an offspring to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And she wanted a boy, but Allah decided to give her a girl, subhanAllah. And look from the family who came. Who came from that family? Isa alayhi salam, right? One of the main figures in the history of humanity is Isa alayhi salam. So he's also, look at the dua of Isa alayhi salam when they asked him for the table spread. Yeah? أَنزِلْ عَلَيْنَا مَائِدَةً مِنَ السَّمَاءِ. That was a sign for all humanity. And for the apostles there, and for everybody there. And so on. The stories of the prophets are very inspirational. And Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, there's so many examples. In the battle of Badr, when he raised his hand, and he said, Oh Allah, if this group of people are not victorious, then Islam will finish. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them victory. Think of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in Mecca. He says, Oh Allah, give strength to Islam through one of the Umars. Umar who? Amr ibn Hisham, who is Abu Jahl, and Umar ibn Khattab. Both of them were not Muslims. So he made dua. So Umar ibn Khattab was actually a dua that the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam made. And if you read the seerah, when Umar ibn Khattab became Muslim, it was a big shock. Yeah, it was a big shock. To the point that some of the people in Abyssinia, the Muslims in Abyssinia, came back. Like, khalas, Umar is on the side of the Muslims. Then Islam is very strong. And it made a huge difference when Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu accepted Islam. طيب. So if dua can change the world, what about your life? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can cause the whole world to change through du'as. Then what about your life? Right? Doesn't your life deserve time for you to make dua and to improve it and to become a better person, a better Muslim, a better Muslimah? Right? It does. I think everyone can answer in the positive. When we talk about dua and success, when we talk about dua and success, subhanAllah, if I was to ask you, when do people usually make dua? What would you say?
They're going through a hard time.
When you go through a hard time, yeah, perfectly. So usually, when you go through a hard time, it's like, the last, I tried everything, now I make dua. Is that the right approach? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes actually the disbelievers doing this. Yeah? And He tells us, in several surahs, one of them Surah Yunus, that, when they're on the ship, right? Allah tells us the story when they're on the ship, and there's the waves, and they're about to basically drown. دَعَوُ اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They make dua to Allah with ikhlas. Yeah? لَإِنْ أَنْجَيْتَنَا مِنْ هَذِهِ لَنَكُونَنَّ مِنْ الشَّاكِرِينَ. If you save us from this, we will be grateful. Yeah? Of course, Allah saves them and then they go back to their normal life. But it shows you a few things. One of the things that shows you that Allah will also answer the dua of a non-Muslim if they're sincere. SubhanAllah. This is from His attribute of Ar-Rabb, the Lord. Right? But it also shows you that this is an attribute, it's not an attribute of a believer. A believer, he's with Allah in the good times and bad times. Yeah? What's the advice that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam gave to Ibn Abbas, yeah? Is to right, get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the good times, He will know you in the bad times. Right? Get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the good times, He will know you in the bad times. And so the believer, he makes dua all the time. Not just when he's in a bad situation, right? Or when nothing else works. Because what are you saying now? You're saying that all the other ways, I believe that all the other ways are better than dua. And the one who answers dua is who? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're saying that all the other ways, are better than you, O Allah. Yeah, and Allah's in control of all those other ways. So really, it's a sign of weak iman when a person does that. And sometimes we do it unconsciously, right? So when do we make dua in difficult moments? Yeah, when there's no other option. Khalas, I tried everything. Let me make dua. No, make dua first, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open those options. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open those options, and that's the right adab with Allah. That's the right etiquette and manner, is to ask Allah for anything, even if something small, right? You ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what should be the attitude of the believer when it comes to dua? They ask Allah in the good times and the bad times, right? They ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala في الشدة وفي الرخاء, in the easy times and in the good times, right? And that's why some of us, our lives are just like, it's like a roller coaster. We just go to normal and then we wait till a tragedy to happen, then we make dua. Back to normal, right? Why can't we go a bit higher? When we're in a good time, we ask Allah to make our lives better, to give us, right? To give us risk, strength, and things like that, right? That should be the attitude of the believer. When we talk about, when you read in some of these self-help books, they talk about, happiness and success. At the end of the day, when you really read through a lot of them, it all boils down to the same thing, right? They'll tell you, and it's true, it's true, and it's not like it's a load of garbage, but they'll tell you, you wanna make goals, right? So step one would be to make great goals that bring you happiness. So you think of things like, what makes me happy? Okay, I want to, start a business. I want to lose this much weight. I want to, get a PhD in this, or get a bachelor's in this, or I want to get married, whatever. So you make your goals, okay, or the things that will bring you happiness, okay? And then what do? You break those goals into smaller goals, okay? So the first step, I have to do this, then I have to do this, and then after this. And then what do they tell you? Then you make a list of actions that will help you achieve those goals. So now let's say your goal is, مثلا, to double your income by the end of 2024. Yeah? Everybody would love that, right? Everybody would love that? طيب. Alhamdulillah. طيب. It's achievable. You make that goal. طيب. Now you say, okay, what are the goals that I need to do? So, by January I have to do this, by February I have to do this. Okay? And then what are the actions I have to do daily? And then you make those into habits, right? You turn those into habits. And then if you're consistent with that, eventually you will achieve that. That's what they tell you. Yeah. What did they leave out of the equation? Is the tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the aqilha part, right? The tawakkul, imagine all this, which is great, right? When you add Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the equation. It's boom, it's mind blowing. And if you really try it, a lot of people, a lot of Muslims, they just do the second part and they don't do any of this, right? They don't actually plan their du'as. They're very, Sheikh Hamza Ayedi, may Allah have mercy on him, he would say, if some people say like my life sucks, right? I hate my life, my life sucks, and he would say, probably 100% sure that his du'a list sucks, or he doesn't even have a du'a list. Like he doesn't have du'a, he just goes on with his life, right? And isn't that true if you think about it? Like, have you ever seen someone who is has a really difficult life, he hates his life, it's very mediocre, and they have this amazing dua list, and they're always making dua. No, right? A person who lives their life with dua, there's someone who's happy, someone who's achieving things, right? And so you see a connection there. So imagine someone does all of this and includes, right? He actually applies the hadith properly. He does all the work, the amal, the action, the tying, and then he puts his trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You add Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the equation, you can achieve a lot of things, subhanAllah. You can achieve a lot of things, right? So, sometimes this was something that I experienced, and you experience this all the time, right? You make some goals, then you achieve them, then khalas, your life kind of is just normal, and sometimes you just don't realize it. So if your life is stagnant, then you need to put dua into your life. If your life is just kind of boring, it's not exciting, then it's because you're missing dua out of your life, right? It's not part of your life. It's not something that you do. And one of the amazing things I noticed when I did that course with Sheikh Hamza, right, is that I noticed that when you have du'as, you're more willing to do your salah. It's a very interesting relation. We said the supplication, right? But there's a connection, right? Because most of the salah is dua. And actually, a salah, if you understand that it's a conversation with Allah, it's going to be more meaningful to you. And so, one of the times that the dua is usually accepted is when you're in sujood, right? When you're in sujood. So imagine, and this is how the Prophet ﷺ, he would say to Bilal, "Arihna biha ya Bilal." He would say, Bilal, make adhan so we can relax with the salah. So salah was a place that Nabi ﷺ would want to go to, right? A place of tranquility, relaxation, whatever you want to call it. Imagine that there was a place that if you went to that place and you asked for something, you would get it, right? That's as-salah, right? And I remember when I had these du'as, I have this list of things that excite me, right? I would just wait for the next salah. So it actually helps with your salah as well. When you have something to look forward to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, right? So many times we just go into salah, it's just like, okay, let me just get over with. But you don't realize you're having a conversation with the Lord of the universe, the one who can give you whatever you want. We don't think about that, right? But you're in front of Allah, and Allah says, "Ud'uni." Allah, it's not like I'm not the one telling you. Allah says, "Ud'uni, astajib lakum." Ask me, I'll give you. But we're standing there, so many times, and we're just like this, and we're in need. We're in need of so many things, not just material things, but so many things. Subhanallah. So many times, we reach a point in our life where it's just normal. We're not growing, right? Some people, they call it like a midlife crisis. They don't know what to do. They're like, oh my God, what did I do with my life? I wish I didn't do this. Right? And it's probably because, right, you don't have dua in your life. Or your dua list sucks. Or you just don't have one, right? And so we have to ask the question, is dua even part of your life? Ask yourself right now, is dua really part? Okay, tayyib. And alhamdulillah now, it's a great time to prepare for it because the month of dua is coming. Ramadan is coming, right? And Sheikh Muhammad, may Allah have mercy on him, he used to have this thing where he would teach his students to make that list of du'as and say them every day of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. Why would he say that? Anybody know why? Why would he say that? Because what's on one of those nights? Layl al-Qadr. And the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us that if your dua comes on Layl al-Qadr, it will be accepted. Done deal. Right? So he mentions, he says when he was a kid, 11 years old or something, he wanted to memorize the Quran. So he thought if he made that dua, every night on the last 10 nights of Ramadan, it will hit one of them for sure. We don't know when Layl al-Qadr is. It's not on the 27th all the time. So he did that, and subhanAllah, he became a hafiz after 2 years, I think, or something like that. Right? So the month of dua is coming, right? And so we want to make sure that we take action, right? Success doesn't happen by accident. You see people who are succeeding in life and achieving things, it doesn't happen by accident, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it to the non-Muslim. Yeah. What about the Muslims? Yeah. What about the Muslims? The Muslims, if they actually put the same effort that many of the non-Muslims put, and then they put tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, imagine how much more powerful it would be, right? طيب. Dua, one of the great things about dua is it gives you direction. It's very interesting, okay?
you would think someone knows where they're going and then they would make dua. But actually, it's interesting that dua actually gives us direction. How do you think dua would give you direction? If I was to ask you, how? How does dua give you direction? Yeah, you ask. يعني literally in Surah Al-Fatiha, what are you asking for? اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Yeah. يعني, oh Allah, I'm lost. Okay. Show me the straight path, and keep me on the straight path. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about يعني النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, he says ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى. Allah found you that you were يعني you weren't on the straight path, you were يعني you didn't have Islam. فهدى. Allah guided you, right? This is in Surah Al-Duha, right? So think of someone who subhanallah is driving a car. You know, if you're driving and there's someone in front of you and it's like 60 and he's just driving like 30 or 40, okay, and he keeps like stopping and then going again, what would you think? What would you think about that person? Huh? What would you think about that person? Like, does he know where he's going? Yeah, maybe. He's probably, some of you might say, oh, it's probably an old man, but forget the old man, okay? He's probably like lost, right? Or he's looking for a place, or his Google map broke, right? But it's probably because he's lost. He doesn't know where he's going. And so, had he known where he's going, he would have went at the speed limit or faster. And so many of us, our lives are slow because we don't know where we're going. Like, we don't have direction. And a lot of the times, it's because we never sat down and thought about it. We never sat down and tried to make a list of du'as that we want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so one of the interesting exercises that will benefit you a lot is when you sit down and you're like, okay, what do I want in life? And then you put those into du'a, you'll see that it's going to push you in the right direction. Right? It's going to push you at least, maybe not pinpoint exactly what you want to be or what you want to do or what's your life purpose, but at least it will show you the direction. At least you know you're going north. Yeah? Alhamdulillah, you're not going south and you're supposed to go north. So it gives you a lot of direction. So that's one thing that du'a will do for you. And like we mentioned, it keeps us on the straight path, right? The du'a that we make every day, اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to make this du'a because we are in need of it, right? We are in need of it. Even during the salah, someone could be like misguided, so we need to be guided. And as I mentioned, it helps us find more purpose in our life, and it pushes us to achieve more, right? Because as Muslims, we have to be, we have to have high aspirations. We have to be people who want to achieve things. You know, when we read the history of Muslims, when you read the history of like ulama, scholars who achieved great things, you know, it didn't happen by accident. Imam Bukhari, rahimahullah, he didn't get his collection by accident. It was like, he had a vision, determination, and he made a lot of dua for it, and a lot of hard work, right? And so he had a high goal, right? It's said that it was his teacher who mentioned it, and when he heard it, he said, "Okay, I'll do it." Khalas, subhanallah. They say that he used to be blind, Imam Bukhari, right? And his mom made dua for him. His mom made dua for him, and he actually got his eyesight back. And so, subhanAllah, you see the power of dua. You don't have any control over that, right? Who's going to give you eyesight back except through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So it pushes to achieve more. When you see like the Muslims in the past, they would talk about like conquering this and opening Islam in this land and high goals, right? And so when you think of the people of Gaza, for example, subhanallah, I bet you that this inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep them steadfast. But this generation now, like you can tell that they're very determined people. They have goals, right? The youngsters that are growing up, they have high aspirations. Not like if you follow this conflict for the last 70, 100 years, it's not like the generations before. The generations before were almost like defeated. But this generation, it looks like they have purpose. They have, and you can see that dua is part of their life. Otherwise, they're going against like one of the strongest armies in the world, and mashallah, they're still holding up, mashallah. And they've really sent a message to us Muslims who are in such a good situation. Why don't we use that weapon of the believer to aspire for more? طيب, why make dua? Some people will say, actually, let me ask you guys, why would someone not make dua? You guys tell me. We've all been in that, so let's just be honest with ourselves. We've all been in a situation where we just like, I don't want to make dua. Why would someone not make dua? Maybe because? Okay, because they didn't know how to make dua. Okay, طيب. But I mean, like, if you're really in a bad situation, you will you will learn. But okay, sometimes they don't know the etiquettes or they don't know the words of dua. But so when we talk about dua, we have du'as that that the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us the words of them. Okay, and you can Google them now, alhamdulillah. But they're du'as that you just make them out of your heart, يعني, and you can say them in your language, تمام. يعني, you just make them out of your own heart. يعني, Zakaria alayhi salam, you know, when he made dua for to have a child, he just saw Maryam, right? Because he was taking care of Maryam, and he saw her like have all this seasoned fruit, or this fruits out of season, like, and he said, "Anna laki hada?" Like, where did you get all this? She says, "It's from Allah. Inna Allah yarzuqu man yasha, bighayri hisab." Allah gives whoever He wishes, and so he's like, okay, well, if Allah gives, هنالك دعا زكريا ربه. Then Zakaria is like, you know, I'm gonna go make dua. And Zakaria is not a young man, like his hair is white, right? And his wife was barren, right? And so it's not like he had some kind of words written down. It just came, and it came out of your. But why do people don't make dua?
Sometimes they make it for quite a while and then.
Exactly, that's what I want to hear. So sometimes you make it and you're like, you just give up. You're like, oh, it didn't happen. Khalas. Okay, and we need to talk about that. What else? What other reasons?
Thinking everything's okay, like you're dead.
Yeah. So Allah SWT mentions that, right? When Allah gives us, we tend to forget about Him, like, oh, we don't need Him. And subhanAllah, humanity now has reached a level where they think, and that's why atheism has grown, where they think they don't need Allah. We can even clone now. We can do whatever. We can go to the, and they don't understand that all this is by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not like a farmer, not like, you know, back in the day, you know, who depended on rain and things like that. Like now when you have a paycheck every 2 weeks, like you don't think of Allah too much, right? And that's a danger, and it's very dangerous, right? When you're comfortable, right? And we see that subhanAllah throughout humanity, when nations reach a peak in wealth and power, and they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's their downfall, right? Other reasons like, I'm too sinful, right? Some people will say that, I'm too sinful, Allah would never accept my dua. And we said, we bashed that myth, yeah? How? We said Iblis, right? You can't be worse than Iblis, right? Iblis made dua and Allah accepted his dua. طيب, why should, يعني, the first one is, I tried and it never, but Allah said He will answer dua. وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ قِيلًا وَمَنْ أَصْدَقُ مِنَ اللَّهِ حَدِيثًا. Who's more truthful than Allah? So if Allah said He will answer, He will answer. خلاص. How, when, what? That's not your concern. You might say, well, it is my concern. Well, I will say to you, don't make it your concern. Why? Because you don't know what's best for you. You don't know. And that's part of being a Muslim, being humble and submitting to Allah. Because you don't know what's best for you. You might say, yeah, I know that doubling my income is best for me. No, you don't. Who told you that? What if doubling your income, okay, was going to cause you to leave Islam, for example? Yeah? For example. Or being a millionaire. Maybe that might being a millionaire will make you leave Islam. Would you want that right away? You wouldn't want it. The ulama, they say something interesting. They said, if Allah gave you the power to plan your life, yeah, until you die, you wouldn't come up with something better than what Allah has given for you. You wouldn't. And so we have to trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we make dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ رَبُّكُمْ ادْعُونِي. We mentioned this ayah. Allah said, call upon me, أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. خلاص. If you make dua for me, أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. In another ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, when he was bringing the ayat of Ramadan, right? He mentioned dua as well. Yeah. وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي. What's the ayah? Huh? Yeah. What's the ayah? How does the ayah start? Yeah. أُجِيبُ دعوة. How does the ayah start? It just blanked. It'll come inshallah. طيب. نعم. أُجِيبُ دعوة الداعي إذا دعان. That I will reply, okay, the reply, the call of the caller if he calls. If he calls. That's the, يعني, and a lot of us don't make that step. We don't actually make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Something interesting about dua, why should I make dua? Because it's a win-win situation. And the Sahaba said that exactly, literally. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he says, there isn't a Muslim, okay, who calls upon Allah without sin or cutting ties of family, and we'll talk about that later. There are some things that can hold the dua, but that Allah will give him one of the three answers. So if you make dua, you get one of three things, and all of them are good. So don't tell me why should I make dua, because that's out of jahl, out of ignorance. He says he will quickly fulfill his supplication. Yani, oh Allah, make me a millionaire, he will make you a millionaire. Actually, let's use another one. Oh Allah, double my income. Okay, he will double your income. Or he will store it for him in the hereafter. He will store the equivalent of that reward in the hereafter. طيب, you might say, well, no, I want it now. Well, trust me, you want it now, but when you're going to be in front of Allah with yani, being in need of that, you're going to be like, I wish all of them were left till the hereafter. Right? So he will store it for you in the hereafter and you will find it there. SubhanAllah. And so imagine someone makes dua for 30 years, okay, and none of it is accepted, or none of it is manifested the way he wanted. I'm going to use the word manifested because we don't want to say Allah didn't accept it. Allah accepted, but it didn't manifest the way you wanted. So imagine for 30 years you make dua for this one thing, but it's not manifested the way you wanted. But on the day of judgment, you have 30 years of dua. Who wouldn't want that, right? Who would want that? People will be begging that or wishing that all that stuff they asked for was saved for the hereafter. So this one, a lot of people wouldn't like this answer, but it's actually one of the best ones. Or he will divert an evil from him similar to it. Yani Allah will push away. There was an evil coming to you. You were about to lose a child, or you were about to get in a car accident, or you were about to lose your job. Because of this dua, Allah pushed that away from you. So why wouldn't you make dua? So look what the Sahaba said. He said, إِذَا نُكْثِرْ, yeah, then in that case we will ask for more. And that's the answer should be. But a lot of people don't act like that. And then Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, قَالَ اللَّهُ أَكْثَرُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has even more. You know, whatever you ask for, Allah has more. Yeah? And so that should be the attitude of the believer. إِذَا فَلْنُكْثِرْ. Yani if that's the case, that either I get what I ask for, or Allah saves it for me in the hereafter where I need it the most, or He pushes away something that's coming my way. What else do you want? It's free. It doesn't cost you money, right? So shouldn't this be part of your daily life? It should be, right? And remember when we talk about dua, we said there's the du'as that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us. There are du'as that are like, oh Allah, give me patience, give me taqwa, like those general du'as which we should have. But then there are more like specific dunya and akhirah dua, like specific ones that need more thinking, more vision, more effort. Tamam? طيب. Jamil. And this is the last point I wanted to make. That knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the key, right? Many times people are scared to go for something or to ask for something. To go for something and to try achieving something. يعني, I don't know, maybe somebody wants to get a PhD from Harvard, for example. Like, oh my God, Harvard, how am I going to get there from you, yani, from here, from Calgary, right? Like, oh my God, it costs this much. Oh my. And then they'll just be like, okay, whatever. One thing that Sheikh Muhammad used to say a lot, may Allah have mercy on him, he said, you're not making dua to yourself. And so a lot of times people, when they make dua, they do this and think about it if you do it yourself. They'll say, okay, Hamza, okay, what can I do in my limitations? I could probably do this, maximum this. Okay, I'll make dua for that. Isn't that what we do many times? So we see what we are capable of or maybe capable of, and then we'll make dua for that. And it's so silly because if you could do it yourself, and you didn't need extra help, why would you make dua for it? Right? And so when it comes to dua, you're not asking yourself, you're asking Allah. You're asking the King of Kings. You're asking the one who made all these people wealthy. You're asking the one who gave victory to the Muslims. You're asking the one who in the authentic hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that if Allah brought every single person from the time of Adam until the day of judgment, and He asked every single one of them, wish for whatever you want, and He gave them everything, everybody, all of you, Allah gave you everything you want, it wouldn't decrease anything from His kingdom except the same way like when you put a needle in the water. When you put a needle in the water, does it decrease the ocean at all? Nothing. If all humanity asked for everything they wanted and Allah gave it to them, so why are you being cheap? Because sometimes we're just cheap. And we're like, oh, I don't want to waste my dua. What do you mean waste your dua? It's unlimited, subhanAllah, it's unlimited. And many times it's just people don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The hadith I mentioned now, the three things, had someone understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing that for them, had someone understood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you something every time you ask, and that Allah can hear you, right? Then they wouldn't let go of dua, right? Unless they are ignorant or foolish, right? And we mentioned why many people don't make dua, right? They don't believe dua works. So I've tried it and never worked. Right? And that's very dangerous. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will listen to your dua, okay? As long as you don't say, I made dua and he didn't respond to me, right? And then another thing we're going to talk about later, and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us that when you make dua, have yaqeen that it will be answered. What does that mean? Because many times we make dua with doubt. You don't say it verbally, but you have doubt. And so you're like, okay, I want to, I don't know, lose 30 kilograms. And then a person in his mind's like, oh, that's impossible. And you make dua for it, and you're like, it's impossible. That means you think that Allah doesn't have the power to do that. That's what it means, literally. Yeah, you don't say that, but you're doubting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is disrespectful. How can you doubt Allah? Allah can make you lose all your weights, can make you disappear, right? Why are you doubting, right? So when you make dua, you have husn al-dhan, you have good thought of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that yes, Allah can make this, it's easy for Allah. Kun fayakun, that's it. Kun fayakun, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can make it happen. Yeah, you just have to put the effort. Tamam? Yeah, so like I mentioned, others, they feel like it's not possible. Yeah, I want to get a PhD from Harvard. Oh, they're like, oh, no. Hamza? No way. Doctor? No way. And they're like, oh no. You're not asking yourself, you're asking Allah. Yeah, so who cares what you think? You're asking Allah, the one who can give you anything. So why are you being so, so pessimistic and negative, right? And we mentioned others feel they're too sinful, right? Okay, sin has an effect on dua, but you make tawbah and you make dua. What's the problem with that, right? And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told us when a person commits a sin and he makes wudu and he goes, he makes proper wudu, a perfect wudu, and then he prays 2 rak'ah, and that sin will be erased. And that's the best time to make dua. Yeah, and you notice when the prophets were making dua, usually they're doing ibadah. Like you look at the dua of Ibrahim, one of the greatest du'as. What was he doing while he made the dua? Anybody know? وَإِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ. What was he doing? He's building the Kaaba. Like he's literally building the Kaaba, yeah, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while he's making the dua. SubhanAllah. Yeah, so one of the best times to make dua is during ibadah. And that's why the sujood is the best time to make dua. Right? Sujood is the best time to make dua. And I'll finish with this hadith. Yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, many people don't know that, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every night, every single night, yeah, there isn't like a day off, a holiday, every single night Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to the lowest level of the heavens in a way that befits him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he asks, yeah, who wants me to forgive them? I'll forgive them. Who wants to ask me for anything? I'll give it to them. And most people are sleeping, subhanAllah. Yeah, most people are sleeping when the King of Kings come down and he's asking, subhanAllah. Yeah, who is there to beg of me so that I grant him? Who is there to beg forgiveness from me so that I forgive him? Yeah, and he continues like that until the day breaks. Yeah, until like Fajr time, subhanAllah. And so it's such a golden opportunity for someone. This is like one of the times that dua is highly accepted at this time, and right before like Fajr, after the first third part of the night, and that's why like tahajjud, it's so powerful. When someone gets up in the middle of the night, Allah tells us in Surah Sajda, right, when He's talking about the people who pray Qiyam al-Layl, right, He says they have Allah, they don't know what Allah subhanahu has prepared for them from reward in the Day of Judgment. Specifically for them, right? Because of them getting up and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ, right? And they're making istighfar for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the ashar. That's the time. As-suhoor time is the time before Fajr. That's the best time to make dua. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is every night, yeah, And then people say, Allah doesn't, right? And many times, subhanAllah, we want something really bad, but we're just not willing to get up and do the effort, right? And even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, every night He's calling. Every night He's calling, and many of us are asleep, unfortunately. So that's what I wanted to cover today. Alhamdulillah. We got 5 minutes for questions, and then I have to head out to the Fairview Masjid. So, any questions? Tafadhali.
How do you work on like having more yaqeen that Allah will like accept it and not be so doubtful?
So how do you build your yaqeen in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Jamil. So there's many ways. طبعا one of the ways, one of the really powerful ways is reading the stories of the prophets. So when you read the Quran, and subhanAllah, you read the story of Yunus, right? He's in the belly of the whale, yeah, in the darkness of the belly of the whale, in the darkness of the ocean, in the darkness of the night. فَنَادَى فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ أَلَّا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ سُبْحَانَكَ. Right? You read that story, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala got him out of that. Read the story of Lut. He's by himself, and he said, if I only had someone to, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him. Read the story of Musa when he's in front of the ocean and Fir'aun is behind him, and his people, okay, are like, we're doomed. And then he says, no. Inna ma'i rabbi sahdin. And then Allah saved him. SubhanAllah. He gave him the power. Read the stories of the prophets. Read the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. You know, SubhanAllah, the story of Yusuf is so powerful, right? His dream and how he was by himself and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him, right? And when he made dua, right? When the women were torturing him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved him, right? So there's so many, this is probably the most important thing. The other thing is that the more dua you make, the more your yaqeen increases. How so? When you make dua for something and Allah gives it to you, you're like, oh, that works. Like, even biologically or physiologically, you probably get like a dopamine rush or something, right? You're gonna feel like, oh, this works, and you're gonna wanna do it naturally more and more, right? And you see people who have a lifestyle of dua, they're just flying, right? And so really, the person who doesn't have dua in his life, mahroom, he's someone who's deprived. I hope that answers your question, inshallah. Yeah. So read the stories of people who made dua, especially the prophets, and do it yourself. Do it, and then, especially in Ramadan. Do it, and you'll see things happen, and you just keep going. Because when something works, or when you see something works, right, you do it. And remember, like, what I mean by works, some of it will manifest, right? Some of your du'as will actually come in exactly like you wanted them, and some won't. Tamam? And that's why we make dua for many things. Tamam? طيب. What else? Any other question? Going once? Twice? خلاص? طيب. Barakallahu feekum. Inshallah, next week, our plan is to, inshallah, talk about how to make dua. Inshallah, make a list. Maybe start with your own list. So inshallah, go home with a list, and then inshallah, we'll work on it in the last week. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum.